She's a graduate of the University of Miami in Coral Gables with a degree in business administration and a concentration in international finance and marketing. And at this point, you're probably asking, well, does that have to do with today's program? I met Leah professionally several years ago and very quickly discovered that we had a mutual interest in dogs generally and Southeastern guide dogs specifically. In addition to client service with her firm, she is devoted to community service. She serves on the board of directors of Southeastern Guide Dogs, where she also serves on their finance committee and philanthropy committee. She also serves as a lifetime board member of the Tampa chapter of the American Red Cross. Leah will introduce us to the mission of Southeastern Guide Dogs and later introduce us to two additional special guests. Please give a warm Rotary welcome to Leah Levine.
Some people are blind from birth, and some lose vision in an instant. One day they are driving to work or looking into the eyes of a child, and the next day, the world goes dark. Some people go blind in combat, fighting for your freedom and mine. Veterans return home with post-traumatic stress disorder, nightmares, and flashbacks so severe that it feels safer and more sane to just never leave the house. When people lose their vision, it's easy to lose hope. When veterans lose hope, it's easy to give up everything. But there is hope. Hope can be found in the magic between humans and dogs. But it's not really magic. It's passion and sweat and the generosity of people like you. You help us give away highly trained dogs to people who need them. You give the tens of thousands of dollars we need to breed, raise, and train a dog for 2 years. You fund our research and genetics, our whelping and puppy education. With your support, our experts have the resources to train our dogs and match them with just the right person. Because you give, people with vision loss and veterans with disabilities can train on our campus for weeks with their new dogs. Because of you, they leave here with a friend. They leave here with hope and confidence and freedom. They go farther and they do more and live full, independent lives with a dog that never leaves their side. You are the magic. You connect our dogs with the people who need them. When you volunteer and fundraise for walkathons, when you raise a puppy, and donate to create the beautiful teams of people and dogs. We're Southeastern Guide Dogs, and we need you, because together we transform lives. Join us.
Wow, I never tire of the videos. Ellie may sit, good girl. Thank you, Steve, very much for such a warm welcome. Thank you all for being here and being interested in our program. I'm honored to serve as a volunteer for Southeastern Guide Dogs. I'd also like to introduce you to my companion, who is Ellie Mae. Ellie Mae is a good ambassador for Southeastern. She's also a registered therapy dog, and together we do quite a bit of volunteer work. I have with me two wonderful people who are graduates of Southeastern. I'd like to introduce them. I'll tell you a little bit about the school, and then I'll introduce a little more detail around Morgan Watt, our keynote speaker. So Mike Jernigan is here today. Mike, would you stand for just a moment, please? Mike is a graduate of Southeastern Guide Dogs multiple times. As you can see, Mike is blind. He's also a veteran. He lost his sight in combat, spent over a year at Walter Reed. He's had a couple of dogs who have served as his guide, and Mike will be available to answer questions at the close of the program today. I would encourage you to chat with him. Mike can tell you a little bit about the independence that came to him when he got his first guide. It's absolutely overwhelming. A couple of stats about Southeastern Guide Dogs. Our school was actually founded in 1982. We have about a 30-acre campus down in Palmetto, Florida, which is very near Bradenton. It takes about a 45 or 50-minute ride from here to get to the campus. We actually have, since 1982, placed 3,000 teams in service. And 3,000 teams represents both guide dogs and their visually impaired companions, as well as service dogs. And service dogs, we typically look to place with veterans who have PTSD. Our school actually is undergoing great renovation. We've been, for about 5 years now, rebuilding a lot of buildings, and we consider our campus actually an education campus. And I'll just give you a couple highlights. So our puppies are all bred and born on campus. We actually own the colony of breed dogs. They are hosted by volunteers, and those dogs come to campus for breeding. The females come back about 5 days before whelping is scheduled, and they birth on campus. The puppies at 3 days begin an education program. We call this our puppy kindergarten, and we begin playing with their feet, getting them exposed to a number of different environments, sounds, surfaces, all the things that you might think come about for a dog that you expect and hope to go on to serve, either in a guide capacity or serving our veterans. One example, we had many years ago dogs who would put the brakes on when they came across black tile. And they would do this because they saw their reflection in the tile, and so they thought it was water and wouldn't go forward. They wouldn't take their person forward because they didn't want to take their person into the water. So we're continually honing our training and bringing these pups and ultimately dogs through a number of different exercises and a lot of socialization and exposure. Fast forward, our puppy raisers take the puppies at about 12 weeks of age. They have them till they're approximately 14 months. Our puppy raisers are volunteers, and they are charged with basic obedience as well as much socializing as they can possibly give to the pup. And at about 14 months, those dogs are actually called to university. So we ring back to the puppy raisers who have been in touch with us throughout this process, and we say it's now time to bring your dog in for freshman orientation. And I'm sure a lot of you are thinking about how could you give up a puppy after spending a year with this dog nonstop and really investing so much time and energy. Well, our puppy raisers will tell you that there's nothing more special than when their dog is matched for a need that is far greater than any of us can even imagine. So puppy university begins with freshman orientation and about 6 months of harness training. We do have a number of dogs that career change throughout the course of their training. I will say that when I was first on campus many years ago, I said, what happens to all the flunkies? And I was very quickly told there are no flunkies, we only have career change pups. So I will say that we have a number of dogs that career change. As you might imagine, there are very rigorous standards to be a guide dog. And we have dogs that don't always meet those standards, so they are first considered for the work with our veterans. So with that, I'd like to introduce you to my friend, Morgan Watt. And Morgan is sitting here. Morgan and his support dog, Foley, have been a pair for about 3 years now, a little more than 3 years actually, right, Morgan? Morgan served in the U.S. Air Force, and he was a canine handler and an explosive device detection specialist. He also served as a first responder with police security. And you might imagine in those two very important jobs, Morgan had a high level of alertness and was very much on guard and focused. Morgan also served in New York City, where he worked closely with security when dignitaries came to the city to provide security. He had a team of people that he led. He also supported the Secret Service for presidential security detail. And when Morgan left the military, he went on to serve as a pilot for NetJets. So he was working as a pilot for NetJets, doing a phenomenal job. And as you might imagine, those early skills of high alertness and awareness and vigilance came in handy in that role as well. But fast forward, and things started to go dark for Morgan. He began to get debilitating migraines. Couldn't get up, couldn't function. He was in a very, very dark place. Morgan happened upon the campus of Southeastern Guide Dogs and will tell you that when he was surrounded by the dogs, he began to feel better. So about 3.5 years ago, Morgan and Foley became a pair. And the stories that Morgan tells about how he got his life back, his desire to live, and be a part of his family with his beautiful wife, Amber, and their two adorable boys, Jonathan and Jamie. And it's because of Foley. And Morgan will also tell you that before one of those debilitating migraines comes, Foley knows it and gets the bag of medicine and brings it to him. It was 2 mornings ago. In fact, on Sunday, Allie Mae and my husband, Jeff, and Morgan and his family and Foley, we all had lunch together. And it was that morning at 4 a.m. that Morgan woke to Foley in the bed licking his face, because Foley knew it was going to be a migraine day. So without further ado, my dear friend and his partner Foley, I'd like to welcome them up and give them an opportunity to share their story.
Boy, good boy. Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today. I can summarize what I have to share with you today in one short theme, and this is it. My dog Foley saved my life. If not for Southeastern Guide Dogs, I wouldn't have Foley. And if not for Foley, I wouldn't be here today. Before I get started into my story, I think it's worth talking about what post-traumatic stress disorder is and why a dog can help. PTSD is essentially an anxiety disorder rooted in trauma. As you know, anxiety is a normal human reaction, but it can be totally disabling during an anxiety attack. Personal space is important when dealing with PTSD, and this is where a dog goes to work. They create space in a crowd when needed, they check around corners to prevent surprises, and watch for people coming up from behind you. Additionally, they're taught to assist with balance if dizziness becomes an issue. Rather than standing up here and telling the details of all the trauma that I've been through, I'd like to focus on telling you the upside of working with a dog to heal these invisible wounds. You comfy, Foley? It sounds like he's found his little spot leaning up against me. My experience as an airman in the Air Force was a good one, and one that I would not trade for anything. At the age of 19, during the first Gulf War, I trained in explosive detection as a law enforcement canine handler. I took my job very seriously with the expectation that I would find every explosive my mission tasked me to find. The stress to maintain 100% accuracy was extreme. Missing something meant the possibility that someone else might die, and this was an unacceptable outcome. My years working calls as a military police officer took their toll as well. As a first responder to the scene of an accident or a horrific crime, you see things that can't be unseen. Post-traumatic stress disorder is not limited to combat, and my experience is no exception. I also salute the first responders that I've seen in here today. Thank you. I went on to spend 17 years on the flight deck of a jet, and I thought that I'd compartmentalize all those experiences until I faced an invisible disease from which I've never recovered. It started with a deep ache in my nose and behind my eyes. Essentially, it was a constant ice cream headache. Then the vertigo, sometimes lasting hours. It took 9 months and treatment from the Mayo Clinic to correctly identify and understand my diagnosis. Neurological issues, traumatic brain injuries, and the delayed onset of post-traumatic stress disorder. Well, these diagnoses were incompatible with my mission-oriented type A personality. Mentally, I fell into the depths of depression with periods of anxiety. There are weeks of depression that I have no memories whatsoever. What I learned about these two states is that you cannot think your way out of depression, and you cannot stop an anxiety attack once it's begun. Depression is not rational, and in the depths of depression, even with the support of wife and children, I felt very alone. Many who have served in the military are skilled at emotional compartmentalization, which is required to accomplish the mission. I have found that compartmentalization has come at a price. My worldview and outlook on life failed to match the emotions that I either suppressed or experienced because of trauma. My belief system collapsed, triggering an existential crisis. My experience and positive worldview never matched during periods of trauma, or illness for that matter. Recognizing this duality opened Pandora's box, unleashing past traumas all at once in a firestorm of nightmares. This is still hard to say. These extremes made me very suicidal. But I have concluded in my moments of sanity that while my pain would be gone in the moment, I would pass that pain to my wife and kids. Foley stands watch day and night, ensuring that I remember that. And as a note, it took 3 years of feeling suicidal to conclude that what I really wanted to be free from was the chronic pain, not to end my life. It's really hard to admit that, but it's kind of cathartic at the same time. And when I say recent, this was this last November. The role that Foley plays in my life is representative of everything good. The first thing I see in the morning is happiness in the form of licks and tail wags. I often ask Foley, "Why are you so happy?" He stands there undeterred, wagging his tail. This helps me bridge the gap with how I really feel, which is often disconnected, depressed, or anxious. I realize now that I'm no longer at rock bottom because I have a furry, 24-hour clinician to keep me in the present moment. Using your dog to help you alleviate the symptoms of PTSD takes patience, but it's rather simple. I simply watch my dog. I let him set the tone. I embrace his feelings and I mix them with my own. When he takes a deep breath, I take one too. Dogs are natural at shedding stress and fur. I take life at Foley's pace rather than my own. I never slowed down until I got Foley, and I realized that the harboring of the constant stress of my mission pace did not match what the world was now asking of me, which was simply to relax and be mindful of the moment that we are in now. You see, in the military, deep bonds form and a brotherhood develops, built upon a mutual understanding and unwavering trust shared under adverse conditions. The camaraderie that forms has a protective effect against stress. As a former military working dog handler specializing in explosive detection, I had this trust in my dog for protection. Foley can't turn into a Tasmanian devil like my military dogs could, but he has proved that there is no greater loyalty, and I know he watches my back. The mission is different, but the camaraderie and the protective effect against stress is the same, validating our need for these dogs in our lives. This suppressed trauma creates times that makes you feel down, and naturally you look down too. Now when I look down, there's a happy dog looking back up at me. He's asking me, what's next? He's given me undivided attention and unconditional love. And as I've built that camaraderie with him over the last 3 years, I've seen my life transform with the nature of this dog. See, we can live beyond this chronic condition of PTSD by looking for ways to experience something called post-traumatic growth. Post-traumatic growth is the positive change experienced due to the struggle with traumatic life circumstances. This phenomenon validates the battle we go through to live life in a new reality. You know, I find it fascinating that I'm connecting more with people now by sharing my weaknesses than I ever did projecting my strengths. Foley is a facilitator of my emotional return to being human. My high-stress careers, finding explosives and flying jets, never allowed me this kind of authenticity. Physical and mental illnesses are liabilities in those worlds, and I never understood the toll that it took on me until my body simply did not return to a healthy state. On a side note, I'd like to talk a little bit about Southeastern guide dogs. In the last now 11 years, Southeastern has expanded the ways it serves veterans. In addition to guide dogs, service dogs for PTSD, and facility therapy dogs, our trainers are now able to provide customization and training to address mobility issues, balance support, hearing alert, and seizure response. Our Gold Star dogs are also new, and they are dogs that were not able to work in another career, but are given to a family that lost a loved one in the military. These dogs provide loving support for families dealing with grief. I believe in these dogs for healing because I can honestly stand up here and tell you again, this dog saved my life. Many of us are familiar with the number 22, representing the sobering estimate of 22 veteran suicides per day. Veterans are spreading awareness of PTSD and suicide using the numbers 22. But today I'm celebrating that because of Southeastern guide dogs, because of this dog, I am not number 23. Thank you.
Thank all three of you for being here today and for sharing your stories, and obviously what an amazing amazing program, and who, let's just be honest, who doesn't love to get licked in the face by a dog? I mean, it's just so thank you all very much. Dan Gargas, our 50